Hello and welcome to Data Mart for Excel. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to run your very first SQL reconciliation example using invoices and payments. This tutorial is packaged with a standard edition, so you don't need to set anything up. Just download the workbook and follow along. The first step is to download the standard edition from this web page. This is the standard edition as an XLSM file. When you download it, you'll notice that it comes as a workbook instead of an XLAM add-in. We provide it this way so you can open it straight away without needing to install anything in Excel. So we can now open it after renaming it to D4E free template.xlm. We can now open it in Excel. So here we have the XLM standard edition as a workbook with some tutorial examples. So we've opened the Excel file. This is a macro-enabled workbook. If it shows you some security warning, just click on Enable the macros. So you'll see some sample sheets. So we're interested in these invoices and docs payments, as well as the SQLs we will see. And in this sheet, we have some tutorial descriptions. So let's start by running the first tutorial, which uses a D4E Python routines running on tab sheets. The D4E routines are implemented using SQLite code imported in Python. So these are your two sheets that you will read using SQL. So in this tutorial guide, we can follow the examples and the instructions. First, we can see that we simply need to open the workbook, which we've already done. And we're not going to save any files yet. We'll do that in another tutorial. So we're ready to run it. So from here, we go to the add-ins, My Tools, and the first thing we do is to create some menus. So we've created some menus. So now we are ready to run them. So the next step is to run some of the menu items we've created. So we go back to add-ins and we here run SQL versions, and there we have some tutorials that we have just set up. So these tutorials or these menu items refer to SQLs. The SQLs can be found in the sheets, which are individual columns of SQL. So this is what we actually created when we clicked on Get Menu. And we are now ready to run them. So the first tutorial, which we'll run right now, is really to read the invoices and payments sheets. From these two payment sheets, we'll read that, and then it will simply create a report. And this is the result of reading these two invoices and payments. What it is actually reading the invoices, reading the payments, and joining them to be able to come up with a report like this, which is saying for each customer how much was invoiced, how much was paid, and how much still has to be paid. So it is a very useful flash report of invoices and payments. So that's tutorial number 1. There is another report we can run under tutorial number 1, which is a similar report. Let's just do that now. And this is the result of that SQL. So that SQL is simply another report of when the last invoice date or when the last payment date was made. Note that that last menu was simply executing this SQL here. And the same thing, that this was the SQL being executed. And in this SQL we have some driver indicating that we should use some sheets in this current active workbook, and somewhere here we nominate what sheet we wanted to read. From here, from docs payments, for example, you can see he's trying to read and join these two tabs. Okay, so that's tutorial number 1. Let's now go to tutorial number 2. If you want to clean up what you've been doing, you can use this command, my tools, remove sheets, and therefore you're ready to start on tutorial number 2. This tutorial number 2 demonstrates ODBC CSV, wherein instead of reading the sheets from the data from sheets within the active workbook, let's assume they are actually CSV files. So in here, we follow this preparation step. We actually copy these two tab sheets onto a CSV file. So as soon as you've done that, you would be able to continue with tutorial number 2. So in tutorial number 2, we have assumed that we've copied this on earlier, and we should now be ready to run the menu. So we can run get menu again, but one is enough. So we can actually start running tutorial number 2, which is, according to this, is another report that reads the CSV file. So by clicking on this, we have tutorial number 2 giving practically the same results. But if you go and let's do another tutorial number 2 report. Let's try and run this, and this should be as another report, which is simply to look at all the payments and invoices. So if you look at sales, we were actually executing the SQL in column C and the SQL in column D. So column D is a simple demonstration SQL. It's just listing the payments and the invoices one after the other. Whereas here again, we are seeing that we are reading the SQL, the data from CSV, and this is the ODBC driver that tells us where to get the data. This is where we saved it, and therefore this SQL, if you look at the prompt, it is actually referring to the CSV file in that folder, ctemp d4e. That is why we saw it working with this data. So now that is tutorial number 2. So let's try and do tutorial number 3 this time, wherein we're running the two CSV files slightly differently, wherein we've already saved them. We'll read them again. This is now our tutorial number 3. We will execute these three SQLs. So let's have a look. So let's also clean up before we could start tutorial number 3, and in tutorial number 3 we want to execute the first SQL, which is to simply read the payments. It's slightly different. What's happening is that we're assuming we're reading the payments first, and then next we're reading the invoices and bringing them into their web in our active workbook. So we now have two active workbook, and then we can now run the third report in the tutorial, which is to read what we have uploaded into our active workbook. And therefore, this gives us the reconciliation between invoices and payments. Let's step back and see what we actually did here by looking into the SQL. We ran three reports. This one is simply to create the payments. This one is simply to create the invoice. And this last one is actually to read both. So you'll see in our SQL, this is simply reading a CSV and putting it into the spreadsheet. And then the third one is reading both data that we have actually created. So that is why the name of the from is actually the name of the sheets that we have created. So we created the sheets, and this is what we were trying to read now. And therefore, effectively, we did a reconciliation between invoices and payments. Slightly different from our first tutorial because we were importing the data into our spreadsheet. What is that saying? That it simulates actually the invoices may come from very different DBMS. For example, the invoices may come from Oracle, and then the payments will come from SQL Server. And yet, what you've done is you put them in your active workbook and then read them off together in your active workbook. You wouldn't normally be able to read simultaneously from an Oracle database and an SQL and then join it with a table from a Microsoft SQL Server database. So only by going through this method are you able to join the two. So, in summary, we've seen three ways to run the same reconciliation SQL. First, by reading the invoice and payment sheets directly into inside the workbook, and second, by exporting them to CSV and aggregating them using ODBC. And then third, a slight complicated way by reading any external files from using ODBC or Python, and then once they're in the spreadsheet, only then can you join them. That's the end of this tutorial. You now know how to open the workbook, enable macros, and run SQL to reconcile invoices against payments using Sheets, CSV, or ODBC. Thank you very much.